Hi, I'm Holly. I'm a faithful believer in Jesus Christ. I'm delivered daily from drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes. I struggle with codependency, guilt, fear, loss, grief, resentment, trust, anger, self worth, self esteem, self image, and food. In John Baker's 4 book series, The Journey Begins, there's a prayer that says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test my thoughts. Point out anything that you can find in me that makes you sad, and lead me along the path of everlasting life." I ask this of God every day. My relationship with God was not always so close if I acknowledged Him at all. My mom and dad were married at age 20. Mom could not wait to get away from her abusive mother. She didn't know it at the time, but my dad was a paranoid schizophrenic. He would beat my mom. Once, when she was pregnant with me, he waited until she had curlers in her hair and beat her in the head and punched her in the face so hard that she flew over the bed and into the wall. She left him and he went into the Marines, and I didn't see him until 2012. A blessing from God, I'm sure. I was born in 1970. We lived in Detroit, Michigan. Mom was a hippie doing all the drugs. I even remember walking in our bathroom where her and a friend of hers had a belt around her arm. I didn't know it then, but later realized that they were shooting up. I was left with babysitters that were high, children themselves, or left alone. The first time I remember being molested was by a girl just a few years older than me. Next was by a 23-year-old man when I was 7. Mom and I had already been smoking weed for some time at this point together. At age 10, someone broke into our house and raped my mom, so we moved to a suburb. What a different world. Our landlord was not going to let us keep our cat, but they said if I would come to church every Wednesday with them that I could keep it, so I did. At first, I did good, being in the choir, watching the kids in the daycare, and learning about God. But as time went on and I was dealing with the lifestyle of my mom, I started skipping class at church and going across the street to the grocery store and stealing cigarettes. I started hanging out with an older girl and having sex. My mom started the business of selling joints and buying alcohol for neighborhood kids so she would have money for her vodka and beer. When I started high school, people knew me because of my mom. I got pregnant at 14 and later would have to have 3 paternity tests before finding my son's father. Just after I had my first child, a 22-year-old guy that would come over and party with my mom and I started taking me out, and I ended up getting pregnant with twins. 5 months after the twins were born, we went to the doctor to see if I was pregnant again, and it was too soon to tell, so they drew blood and told us we had to wait for the results. On the way home, he said that I would have to abort if I was pregnant. I said I didn't know if I could do that. After we got home, he called me out to the driveway and he hugged me and told me that there would be room for more, not to worry, that he would be home early, that he was going to go have some beers with friends. He went to a friend's house where he knew that there was a loaded gun. He had 1 beer, told them that I was pregnant, asked to hold the gun, and stood up in front of 2 small children and shot himself in the head. I got the call 2 days later that I was not pregnant. I had my girlfriend and her friends start coming over and numbing my pain with drugs and alcohol and crowds of people. And I got pregnant and I did have an abortion. 2 days after my twins' first birthday, my house caught fire in the twins' room where they were napping. I was able to get one twin out and I couldn't reach the other one, and we were burning, and I had to make the decision to leave the room or keep burning. I got pregnant the night before this happened. Both my son and I spent 2 weeks in the hospital recovering from the burns and would have months of visiting nurses. No one in my family came to my baby's funeral. My friend's dad let me stay at his mother's home in a town far from where I was used to, and I had nothing. All was lost to the fire. What a different world. No car, no phone, no family. The lady that lived next door to the house was related to my friend, and she got her church to fill the house with everything I needed, showing me again the love God wanted to freely give me, yet I was still so blinded, buried in guilt and shame. After I had my daughter, I met a guy. The house my friend's dad rented me was condemned, so I had to go. The guy I met took me and my 3 living children to his dad's house, but because his dad made so much money, the state cut off my aid, even though he wasn't going to feed my kids. I had to call the police on myself, and DSS came and took my kids. I was able to visit them and build my life and get them back 9 months later. That guy and I got married, and I had my last 2 children, 6 children before the age of 21. I wrote a letter to the state of Michigan begging to get my tubes tied, and they said yes. Our marriage was a crazy drunken mess. My mother died at this point from cirrhosis of the liver. She was 41. I wanted better for my kids, but I only made it worse. I moved, separated from my husband, and it was just me and the 5 kids. But I took in a girl that was smoking crack, and I started smoking crack. 3 months went by, and I knew I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. The guy across the street was interested in me and let us all move into his place. No more crack. Thank you, God. My oldest boy and the remaining twin were out riding bikes, and they came to the door with a group of kids asking to go to the store. Robert, the remaining twin, was hit and killed by a car. DSS was already coming out. I was court ordered to go to AA. I was in a controlled environment, but still not ready to surrender. My drinking only happened after the kids went to bed, even after an AA meeting. I spent the next 8 years that way. I was now 29. I knew I was going to go out like my mother if I didn't make a huge change. I met a guy on the internet in 1998 in a naughty chat room. He didn't smoke, drink, or do drugs. Because of my grandmother, I was able to take a 2-week vacation and meet this guy and his son. I packed up all my kids and drove with no navigation, only printed out instructions from Yahoo all the way to South Carolina. We had a fun 2 weeks and went back up north long enough to pack up a U-Haul truck and moved down here. What a different world. It was so hard transitioning to a sober life. I had never been completely sober, only during pregnancy and not from pot, and did not know how to deal with the conflicting teens we had. I would lock myself in the bathroom and cut and burn myself, feeling the death of my twins and their dad was completely because of my actions. The loathing I had for myself and what I had put my children through was so great. I wouldn't blame them one bit for hating me forever. I also didn't know how others acted that weren't using. Going through my sent emails one day, I found 1 or 2 that were sent that I didn't write, asking a couple naughty things as me, like I wrote it. The lady replied and said she didn't feel comfortable because she knew my boyfriend. I printed these out and drove to where my boyfriend was and confronted him, asking should I go back to Michigan because this was not what I wanted. He said no, that he loved me and he wanted me to stay and that he wouldn't do that again. This made me feel like something was wrong with me, like I was not what this guy wanted. The next time I busted him, he pulled over and we got out of the car and he cried and said how much he loved me and that he would marry me right then. I said, no way, I don't want this kind of lifestyle. Trust was broken. But look who he took in, a broken addict that was overweight with all these kids. Yet I buried my pain with food, only making it worse. I started attending church, but still did not surrender fully to God. John Baker says, "We may have been stuck in our hurt, hang ups, or harmful habits for so long that it has become part of how we perceive our identity, part of who we feel we are. Things with my boyfriend were great for a good while. I thought he was serious about not doing that kind of thing anymore, and we were married 2 years after I came down to South Carolina. In 2008, he accidentally left his cell phone at home, and there were texts from a girl. When confronted, he said that it was my anniversary gift, that he was looking for a massage therapist for me. He sweet-talked me again, and this became a cycle. We had our first Celebrate Recovery in 2010 and went to marriage counseling. Out of the blue, after searching and spending about $300 sending out letters and gaining online info trying to find my dad, he called me. I was 42. The only way we could meet in person is if he stayed with me for a month because he was on a fixed income. So he paid his rent and bought a bus ticket. And I made the mistake of telling him everything I had been through, my whole past. We made it through the whole month, but when he got on the bus to leave, our eyes caught for a second and I knew something was wrong. I called, and finally he answered, and he told me never to call him again, that I was no good. Then my son found out he had a daughter who was 8. Not too long after meeting them, my granddaughter's mother came to me telling me that my husband was stalking her under a fake Facebook account. I went on the fake account, and sure enough, it was my husband. She showed me screenshots of him telling her how beautiful she is. When I confronted, he said he wanted to be caught and didn't even feel like the same person that was doing that. Just days before finding out about that, we had got matching tattoos on our ring fingers. We went to a marriage thing at a church in North Augusta called A Love Worth Fighting For. It was expensive, and my husband bought the DVD and the t-shirts. After all this, I found a Facebook message where he was asking a young guy if he knew where he could find any hoes that only needed a little money. My husband and I don't communicate. This makes me feel unworthy of his thoughts and feelings. Over time, I've gotten to the point where I feel it useless to share my thoughts and feelings with my husband, but God is working on us. When I found Graniteville Community Celebrate Recovery, he came with me and we started attending this church. Come to find out, God had led me to the church that I attended before. It was just in a different location. I was finally ready to completely surrender to God's will for my life. The people at this church and Celebrate Recovery have become our friends, where before we only had 1 or 2. We are deeply involved in our church and Celebrate Recovery group. My husband and I have been baptized, washed clean, and made new. I'm praying that God used this Celebrate Recovery and that my husband and I work the steps and are healed through this process. What a different world. This is my prayer for others to be helped through this testimony. Loving my Jesus, showing my scars, telling my story of how mercy can reach you where you are. And I pray the whole world hears the cry of my heart is to see all the ones that I love, loving my Jesus. I would like to share with you my favorite Celebrate Recovery prayer, Principle 7B prayer. Dear God, help me set aside all the hassles and noise of the world to focus and listen just to you for the next few minutes. Help me to get to know you better. Help me to better understand your plan, your purpose for my life. Father, help me live within today, seeking your will and living this day as you would have me. It is my prayer to have others see me as yours, not just in my words, but more importantly in my actions. Thank you, God, for your love, your grace, your perfect forgiveness. Thank you for all those you have placed in my life, for my program, my recovery, and my church family. Your will be done, not mine. In your son's name, I pray. I love you guys so much. Thank you for letting me share.